The rain had been falling all morning, soaking the concrete of the small town repair yard. Water pooled beneath half-finished trucks, and the scent of engine oil mixed with the damp air. The garage doors rattled in the wind, letting in thin blades of gray light. Inside, 20-year-old Clara Hayes was on her knees, her hands black with grease, carefully reattaching the carburetor to an old Chevy pickup. Her brown hair, usually tied up in a neat ponytail, had fallen loose in strands around her face. She was focused, lost in the familiar rhythm of bolts, wrenches, and the deep hum of the shop's radio. Her father, Daniel Hayes, had run Hayes Auto for nearly 3 decades. He was the kind of man who could tell what was wrong with a car just by the way the engine coughed. But now, a shadow hung over him. For the past 6 months, his shop had been losing business to the flashy new Grayson Motors on the other side of town, a plaza with gleaming glass walls, digital scanners, and a staff in crisp uniforms. Daniel's workers were loyal, but even they could feel the tension. Money was tight. Some nights, Clara had overheard her father counting bills late, whispering to himself about overdue rent for the shop. It all came to a head when Ethan Grayson, the sleek, arrogant owner of Grayson Motors, rolled into the shop one rainy afternoon in a black BMW. It didn't come for a repair, it came with a challenge. Daniel was behind the counter, his face unreadable as Ethan stepped in, his tailored suit untouched by the rain. "Dan," Ethan said with a smirk. "I've got something you might want to see." Clara watched from the workbench as Ethan gestured to the lot. Parked outside was a massive diesel truck, its hood propped open, its engine exposed. Even from here, Clara could see the mess of wires and parts that looked completely alien. "This," Ethan continued, "is the Cummins XT900 turbo diesel prototype. State of the art. Only one like it in the state." Let the words hang for a second. "And it's dead. My team at Grayson Motors couldn't get it to start." Daniel crossed his arms. "So, bring it to your dealership. What's it doing here?" Ethan's grin widened. "Because I'm making you an offer. Fix this engine in 2 days, and I'll pay you $20,000. Fail, and you agree to shut this shop down for good." The shop went silent. One of Daniel's mechanics, old Joe, muttered under his breath, "That's a death sentence." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "And if your fancy team couldn't fix it, you think we can?" Ethan shrugged. "I don't. That's why it's fun." Then, with deliberate slowness, he looked past Daniel, straight at Clara. "In fact, why don't we make it more interesting? Let her take a look. I hear your daughter's been learning the ropes." He made her quotes, mocking. Clara's stomach twisted. "I'm not." But Ethan cut her off. "If she can figure out what's wrong, I'll double the offer. 40 grand. Fail, and not only does the shop close, but you admit to everyone in town that Grayson Motors is the only game worth trusting." Daniel's jaw clenched. Clara saw the flicker of worry in his eyes. 40,000 could save them, but the risk was almost suicidal. "Dad," she started, but Ethan's voice boomed again. "What's the matter? Afraid to let the kid play with the big boy's toys?" That did it. Daniel slammed his palm on the counter. "Fine. Leave it here." The deal was sealed. The truck was like nothing Clara had seen before. Under the hood, the components gleamed with precision engineering, but the wiring was a nightmare. There were control modules linked to systems she barely recognized, sensors tucked into places that defied logic. By nightfall, the shop was empty except for Clara and her father. He looked exhausted. running a hand down his face. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do, Clara replied, not looking up from the engine. If I don't, we lose the shop anyway. And I'm not letting Ethan walk in here and talk to you like that. Daniel sighed. This isn't some old Ford we can tear down and rebuild. This is still an engine, Clara interrupted. Metal, fuel, air, and spark. The basics don't change. Her father gave a weary half smile. You sound like me 20 years ago. Hours passed. Clara studied the wiring diagrams Ethan had left, but they felt wrong. Like someone had intentionally mislabeled components. She traced the lines with her fingers, muttering to herself. Somewhere in this mess was the reason the truck wouldn't run. By midnight, her eyes burned from strain. She leaned back, staring at the open hood. Something wasn't adding up. The injectors were getting power, but the ECU, the engine control unit, was sending weird signals. Her father handed her a mug of coffee. You're overthinking it. Sometimes the problem is simple. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling this wasn't just a mechanical fault. It felt deliberate, like a puzzle. The next morning, Ethan showed up with two of his mechanics just to check in. How's it going, Prodigy? He said, leaning against the doorway like on the place. Clara kept her eyes on the engine. Fine, smirked. You know, my best techs spent 3 weeks on this. I'd be impressed if you even figure out which end is broken. She ignored him, but inside, his arrogance fueled her. She would find it. After he left, Clara decided to strip the wiring harness entirely. As she laid the cables on the workbench, she spotted something odd. One wire, almost imperceptibly, had been spliced and reconnected with a tiny resistor hidden inside the insulation. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. That resistor was throwing off the voltage to the ECU, making it think the engine was overheating instantly, so it wouldn't even try to start. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't a normal failure. Someone had sabotaged it. She didn't say anything to her father yet. Instead, she tested the theory by bypassing the modified wire with a temporary jumper. Then she turned the key. The truck roared to life. The sound filled the shop, deep and powerful, and Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She had done it, sort of. Now she needed to figure out why it had been sabotaged, and whether fixing it publicly would play right into Ethan's hands. Because if Ethan knew she'd found the sabotage, it might mean the bet was never about fixing the engine. It might have been about exposing something else entirely. That night, long after the shop was dark, Clara sat in her room, staring at the small resistor she'd pulled from the harness. Questions swirled in her head. Who had tampered with a prototype engine? Why bring it here? She didn't have answers yet, but she knew one thing. Tomorrow, when Ethan came back expecting her to fail, she'd give him a show he wouldn't forget.